So for anyone that's been following my PiStick build, it is nearly finished. I'm just waiting for top plexi to arrive, so then I can start wiring up the buttons and all of the ground connections for everything inside. Other than that, literally everything else is done. The artwork to go under the plexi I've received back, very Final Fantasy themed. These are the little inserts that go underneath the buttons, the clear Sanwa 30mm buttons, so the artwork will sit underneath. Backplate, signed by Yoshinori Ono, creator of Street Fighter, absolute legend. And here's the unit. So I've done some clever wiring inside and utilising the original turbo bar that comes with obviously the Madcatz TE original first edition sticks, the tournament edition ones. Here we have the original lock and unlock buttons. They conveniently are on-off. So essentially it's not momentary. You switch it on, it makes the connection, turn it off and it's not. So essentially what I've done is I've wired up the Raspberry Pi with the Pet Rock Blog control block, which is the guy who invented or put together RetroPie, which is probably the best front end I've used, very easy to use for all of the emulation, and wired it up here. So essentially, now when I flick the switch, it will turn on the Raspberry Pi via a script, but also if I turn it off, it will also run a script to safely shut down the unit so there's no corruption of the drives, etc. I've also wired up the Xbox button and the turbo button as actual buttons, as like these would work, so I can use these for running commands, i.e. if I'm in an emulator to open up, if I use the Xbox button as a hotkey to open up the configuration of all of the units. Now that's new, I don't even know why that's happened by pushing it down. Don't know if there's a short somewhere, but if we look inside, there's all my wiring. So that's the wiring from the turbo straight into the Raspberry Pi controls up here, or the arcade block, which also has a power block in it. This was an old Kickstarter project called Raspbiardo, which is basically a bare bones USB extender, which runs through the runs the power in there, which is 5 volt with 4 amps, which is enough to power all of these USBs with power and to back power the Raspberry Pi. So this is the that's actually running the power into the Raspberry Pi, or into the arcade block, which is through the GPIO powering the Raspberry Pi. And this one is the data for all 4 of the USBs, which have all been wired neatly. Can't see it now, but all the way around the back into Nutrix USB ports on the back. So I have 4 of them, and that's part of the build, the reason why I wanted 4. So not only is the stick wired in here, but I have these 6 buttons here, start and select, these 2 buttons. If I was playing a game that didn't involve a stick, or wanted to play some PlayStation 1 games that wouldn't be using the stick, I can still plug in a USB controller. Or with the Raspberry Pi 3 I've got in there, which has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built in, I can use PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360 and Xbox One controllers through that, as well as any USB controllers that I might want, or connectors, let's say if I've got a Sega pad or NES pad, whatever, USB, I could wire one up in there. So we've got the HDMI out and the barrel jack for the power supply. So essentially, the original back door has just been bastardized, drilled those in, cut out the back to have all my wiring in there. And then basically, I can just use these. So also, if you're playing like a 2-player fighting game, someone else can plug their stick in here. And then you can just basically play 2-player. Or if you're playing something like a 4-player game, like The Simpsons or Turtles in Time, etc. So people can use wireless pads, they can plug in sticks, they can plug in controllers, whatever. So there's a multitude of different options that you can use to actually connect in and play games. So At the front here, I've got a really small 128 gig thumb drive. That's got around about 40 gig of PlayStation 1 games in it. It's then got 4 MSX, PC Engine, Game Gear, SNES, NES, Mega Drive, MAME, CPS 1, 2, and 3. God, that's Neo Geo, Neo Geo Pocket, Neo Geo Color, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance libraries. It's basically full to the brim with so much that I probably will never even play, not even 2% of all the games in there. But it's nice to have just in case you want to play. There's little connectors left for me to do the grounds. So that's for when I get the buttons in. So I've got the actual buttons here. I've got a daisy chain for all of my grounds. There's the 5-pin connector for the Sanwa JLF stick, which is mounted already. I've also gone with clear ball top, and I've got some neat little clear shaft and dust covers for the JLF. I just wanted to make it look pretty because it's going to be a bit of a feature. The original top screws for the plexi, or the top plates here, I've got rid of, and I've actually got these fancy little red ones, which will go nicely with the red on the front here. So it just keeps a bit of a theme going through. So without further ado, I'm just going to turn it on. So we got the button. I resoldered all of the LEDs in here from the original Xbox green ones to red. Again, to fit with the theme. Again, all my cable wiring and my heat shrink is all red to match the theme. And here we go, that should work. So that's now powering on the Raspberry Pi and the control block. This is just an old 10.1 inch HDMI touchscreen LCD, which I used for another project, which I kind of bastardized. As you can see, it's actually got speakers glued into the back of it. It was going to be a portable project, but I never finished it, so I thought, hey, I'll just use that for testing. The actual input for the power for the screen is in one of these USBs, which is great, so it just means that these are working with the 5 volt going through. HDMI is plugged in the back, the power supply obviously, that's everything working. So if I actually take out that USB from there, from number 1, plug it into number 2, I can do that. It should power back on. There we go, USB 2, power back on. Do that again for USB 3, screen's back on, plug it, USB 4, just plug back on. As I haven't got the stick or anything plugged in, I can't go through any of the controls and stuff like that at the moment. I usually just use the keyboard to do any of the configuration setup that I need. But yeah, so that's everything powered on. Don't know if you can see the light of the Raspberry Pi anywhere. Yeah, it's just blinking a little bit, sort of a green flash there. So with the control block, as I said, not only is it the arcade controls, it's also a power block as well. Pet Rock Blog also does a separate power unit, but he built it into the arcade block, which I think is a great little touch. So now all we need to do is, if we see this box, the switch again for the lock and the unlock, we flick it again, and basically it will go through a shutdown script. So it will safely shut down everything, so there shouldn't be any problems. Let's do that. Flashing light means that it's powering down. It just takes a minute. So basically this is all parts and stuff that I had lying about, and I just thought, you know what, I might just do something with it. Bit of a project. I've got other sticks. I've got a TE2 Plus, the new one's the PlayStation 4. Didn't really want to start messing that one up. This was an old Xbox 360 TE one that I had, and well, TE stick, the original ones. Just had it lying around. I painted the sides, I painted the top bezel. And I just basically wanted something else to do with it. So as we can see, the Raspberry Pi and everything is now safely shut down. And yeah, awesome. Bye.